Yes. So, do anybody have any questions from our last session? Is it easy enough to understand? Anyone want to say something, comment on something? Let's revise what we did. So we started with understanding the overall our introductions. Then we look at the table of contents, the overall agenda, right? It's a kind of 3 slides agenda. Then we look at different type of threats, right? And how do we tackle this threat in terms of as a cybersecurity expert? And this is what we're going to learn or start understanding in detail. Does anybody have any question for me, or should we move on?
No, I don't have any.
You don't have any question. That's good. Let's Oh man, I've changed somebody else's name. Or what? Pardon me. Oh. Give me a minute, please. Mm, is that Jay? I've changed your name, sir.
No,
Pardon.
my name is Jay.
Yeah. But okay. Let me. Sorry. By mistake I've changed. Okay, no problem. Let's get started. So whenever you normally want to have a kind of a built security for a given organization, or even being yourself, trying to address all the security measure in terms of being secure, trying to address all these pitfalls, right? How to address these cybersecurity measures or overall security measure, as you might call it. And these are all encompasses under two distinct partigram. One is basically physical security, second is logical security. So physical security, we talk about all the physical things which are normally referred as a tangible things, and when it logical security, these are what we call intangible things. Let's try to understand these two definitions. These are followed worldwide in corporate America, in in Canada, as well as the legal juncture, where they try to understand things based on their shapes, sizes, feeling, touch, and all those things, right? So here, what we are trying to do progressively, we are trying to categorize the entity, the assets, as we normally call them. And these assets can be logical as well as physical. So what are physical asset? The building, the server, the computer, and everything, right? When it comes to logical, which we can't touch, so the software, which we can't see but we feel it's working, right? The brand, the overall your brand value, your trademarks, your overall name in the market, right? All these things, what we normally call as a logical security. Many of the cybersecurity experts still today do believe that only logical security is addressed via cybersecurity, but that's not the case. Normally, in North America and Canada, as we've seen or dealing with quite a few corporates, we are talking about the physical security inclusion also. And that's how we're going to learn these things, okay? But there might be a few organizations where they exclude physical security from a cybersecurity department or an infosec department or a SOC department, okay? And we need to call the cybersecurity department as an SOC department. Let's take a kind of a generic assumption or generic wordings what we use in normally corporate America. Does that make sense? Anybody have any contradiction with this? Please speak up so that we can discuss in depth, right, in a progressive manner. Anybody have any contradiction with learning these things under the label of SOC department? Does that fine with you?
Yes.
Okay, sure. No problem. But please try to understand in the background, same thing, SOC department can be called as an infosec department, can be called as a security department, and so on and so forth, right? So we need to understand wherever we start working, what type of wordings they use, what type of, linguistics symbols they use. And that's what we're going to learn whenever we start working for a particular organization. Like in Canada, there are quite a good amount of French, organization also. So we might need some French word also to be learned there. Okay, so let's work with the flow. Let's start our learning in detail. So normally physical security is a protection of personal, that's a humans, hardware, software, networks, and data from physical actions. and the events that could cause serious loss or damage to an enterprise, to a corporate, to a company, agency, or institution. This include protection from fire, flood, natural disaster, burglary, theft, vandalism, and terrorism. So if you can understand here, we are trying to protect ourselves, we are trying to protect our organizations from fire. So even the fire protections that anti-fire cylinders or anti-fire pressure releasers or sand buckets and everything comes under the security department. Same thing with the flood. So how do you address flood? Flood is a risk, right? How do you address flood risk? You might prepare in advance for some sort of a hanging boat near your office, or some sort of a what you can say elevated base within your office, so that in case of flood you might migrate to a upper floor or something like that, or you might build a strategy how to tackle in case there's a flood. Not every place have a threat of flood, but yes, if you are near to the seashore or near to any river, that might be a possibility. And we normally address this under the risks category. Then natural disaster. Now natural disaster can strike anywhere, but there are certain area where we might have volcano, where we might have these snowstorms, or all those tornadoes and all, right? So all these natural disaster has to be they also normally categorized under a specific risks mentioned there, and all these risks have some addressing risk mitigation strategy, some costs involved in that, some sort of a resources who are attached to such risk. So in case Ravindra is attached to, let's say, tornado risk, so Ravindra should have special training how to address in terms of tornado. What are the desks which are normally you can be under that desk whenever the tornado comes? How we can basically hold ourselves to those fixed desks, so that even in case of very high wind speed, we will not get sucked into it, and so on and so forth. Same thing with burglary. There are some area which are prone to more criminal actions. So we need to build some strategy to address those burglaries. So we'll have more cameras covering all the ground, 360-degree, up, down, and all those things. Then theft. Similarly, theft, you might have a better compound, better, what you can say, fencing walls. Same thing with vandalism. And terrorism, of course, is a new, threat which we are, facing now, because of most probably, how to address these scenario permanently, depending upon your region, depending upon your regional state guidelines. You might apply some sort of a drill for preventing terrorism, for preventing any such actions, even including fire, food, natural disaster, burglary, theft, vandalism, and terrorism. Okay, so this is kind of progressive strategy we build into. So who will build this strategy? SOC department. And SOC department team members also normally get assigned to all a particular risk, like in case of fire. There could be a name of, now let's say, J. In flood, Shilpa. Natural, Ravindra. Natural disaster, Ravindra. Burglary, somebody else. And this way, we normally have certain resources assigned to these risks. And they know they have some special training to curb those risks also. The key to maximize one's physical security means to limit the control what the people have access to, let's say site, facilities, material. And this is what we call physical access control. So access control encompasses the measures to taken to limit exposure to certain assets, to authorize personnel only. In normally every organizations, wherever there's a finance department, we have extra cage and extra access security. Not everybody's access card work there, right? Have everybody experienced these things? Anybody who haven't experienced, like a special cubicles or special offices are not to be accessed by everyone in the organization? Have everybody experienced these things? Anybody who haven't experienced this thing? Hello?
No,
So you have experienced these things, right?
no,
Means if you
no.
go to your organizations, any company you work for, normally the finance department either in a specific room which have restricted access, or they normally, even if the finance support guys, they sit in a cubicle or a kind of meshed enclosure. Like if you go to a bank, wherever you get those cash or wherever you deposit a cash, these guys sit in a special enclosure. Have you experienced that, sir?
Yes.
Yes. And this is for this additional security, because finance is a kind of critical thing for an organization. To have an extra precaution for those things, do address lots and lots of risk. And this is how we normally have even separate access control for separate people. Example of these are corporate barriers include ID, badges, keypad, security guards. However, these obstacles can vary greatly in terms of method, approach, and cost. Again, depending upon your organization's funding, and depending upon your organization's way they feel to address such scenario, they might implement different methods, approach, and cost. Okay, so again, these are all what we are going to learn in terms of how to address this physical security progressively. Let's try to understand. These are reactive measure. Now, there are certain, these are proactive measure. Now we are going to understand the reactive measures of it. Okay,
Excuse
this is
me.
the one of. Hello, yes. Any question? Go ahead,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no,
But
nothing.
just
Please answer.
I understand that hardware and network are physical security, but how about software? I don't understand.
Yes, software is a kind of wrong thing. Means I might need to delete that. Software is a intangible thing, so I need to delete that word software. I think it's my mistake basically. Yes. So software is a intangible thing, as we just discussed, right? So legally it shouldn't consider under these things. They're very greatly, what you can say, great observations. Okay, and our
Thank you.
observation makes it. Yes, thank you, most welcome, sir. So here our observations makes it more active in terms of how do we address security, how we could address securities. Okay, and that's why observation is one of the most key element here. Okay, now let's understand the reactive measures of it. Those are the proactive. So you control the access in terms of anybody visiting that area, and so on and so forth. This is one of the most important physical security components of both prevention and post-incident recovery. Post-incident security is basically the reactive measures of it, and that's a surveillance. In case of in this case, we refers to technology, personnel, and resources that organization use to monitor the activity of a different real-world locations and facilities. The example can include patrol guards, heat sensor, notification system, CCTV, and so on and so forth. Everybody might have seen, like, in certain offices we have more patrol guards. In certain offices we might not have any guards there as well. But when it comes to something like mission critical, cost critical, all such offices where we might have some costly instrument like art gallery, these arts can cost up to a billions of dollars, right? So for that you might have team of guards patrolling outside, patrolling inside, and so on and so forth. And for that, these surveillance or these guards are really important to protect these things, because again these are reactive things. So whenever somebody tries to move anything, steal anything, this guard will react within seconds. Then there are heat sensor, where we normally track down every human activity, any animal coming to that surveillance area, and so on and so forth. And then respective notification can be generated. Today we have really technologically advanced to a level where even we can recognize the face. The machine can recognize face itself, and send us what I can say, updates to various personal via SMS or intimation or a WhatsApp message saying, hey, Ravindra is included this restricted area even if he don't have the clearance for it, and so on and so forth. So we reached to a great level in terms of addressing the surveillance system. The most common type of surveillance is closed circuit TV, CCTV, cameras that record the activity of combination of area. The benefit of the surveillance camera is they are valuable in capturing criminal behavior as they are in preventing it. The threat actors who see CCTV camera are less included to break or to vandalize building out of fear or of having their identity recorded. So even if there are a good number of organizations who have dummy cameras, The cameras are not recording or not working in any way, but they try to give a feeling to a thieves like, okay, there are cameras, so you shouldn't penetrate those areas because you might get recorded, you might get reported, and all those things. In specifically diamond merchants, when it comes to something like areas like New York, Chicago, we have motion sensor based CCTV. Even if a cat or mouse enters into that area, those cameras normally notify all those special surveillance guy with some alerts. Might be some high pitched sound, or might be some SMS or emails triggered to their specific device. And this way we normally have a kind of escalation mechanism, or you can call it as an auto escalation mechanism based on these CCTV footages. The physical security is a preventive measure that incidents response to disaster recovery plans. For example, center of quality of one physical security protocols, how well the company identifies, responds to it, and contains the threats. This is really important. This works with the brand. So if you are secure, if you have your office well secured, it means that you are concerned about your security. If your house is well secured, like we have ADT Security, one of the most prominent organizations within North America. Again, there are Diamond Dozen such security agency. They take a contract of securing a house, so they will apply some 6 7 cameras. They'll give you a DVR to record these activity with the motion sensors. They might have a few few high resolution camera, few low cost cameras, and so on and so forth. So it's a combination of how critical the security of a particular region. So let's say when it comes to door, you should recognize the face, but not everybody goes for this face recognition kind of thing, because you need to spend top-notch dollar for that, right? But yes, this technology is getting cheaper day by day, and that's how we might have like say 10 years down the line, whenever somebody enters to a building, he will be automatically scanned in terms of face, in terms of any arm constellation and all those things, and then he or she will be let entry to the through the door. And I'm talking about the outer fencing wall or the main gate or something like that. So this is how we are progressing in terms of leaps and bounds. Now let's take a minute and understand disaster recovery plans. Disaster recovery plan are normally called as DSDR. This DSDR is basically a kind of a risk mitigation mechanism we built for our system. Again, this is again kind of what you can say response. It's a more of after response kind of scenario, or post incidents recovery. So what it does is basically replicates your data, replicates your logical asset to another location and at a real time. Let's say you're a software development company, you're developing a software, right? And that software is your produce. You sell the software and earn money. That's your business. So whenever you develop this software, you need to make sure whatever is developed will be stored at a location where it won't get damaged anyhow. Might be in a fire, in case of earthquake, in case of snowstorm, or any such scenario. These software get replicated at totally different location, might be in a different continent, different city, depending upon the strategic plan and the cost and the monetary involvement investment in these plans. Normally, if you have a company in let's say in St. Louis, I used to work with Enterprise Rent a Car. So the Enterprise Rent a Car have their data center, and we'll talk about data center in a few slides. Data center, one is in a St. Louis outer area, in between St. Louis and Kansas, if you know, these are the two cities in Missouri. And then another is in Vancouver, Canada. Another is in France. And this way, they normally have these, data replicated at 3 different places. So whoever basically takes a car on rent, at the time of allotting the rental record, the record used to get copied at 3 4 different data center. Data center is an entity where you keep your logical assets like data, software safe, and you get you normally copy this thing via internet, via cloud, at a real time. And this is a kind of disaster recovery we are talking about. How do we achieve that? We'll discuss that in a number of slides. So that's how we achieve these even physical security preventive measures. Does that make sense, or am I talking too technical? Anybody have any question? Are we good? Can I move ahead?
Yes, sir, I would like to add something to that.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So, guys, if you want to summarize whatever Ravindra sir has explained just now, talking about the physical security, logical security, and data center DR or DR side, or you can say disaster recovery plan. So, physical security, if you want to summarize. So there are two types of it, as he has explained. There's proactive and reactive. Proactive is you implement certain things like your perimeter wall when it comes to the boundary capturing your then your security guards or security personals. Then there are CCTVs. So these are like what as a proactive measure. But when it comes to the monitoring part of it, you have your real-time monitoring in terms of CCTV, your access card. Those are like monitoring, and a monitoring part which is as a reactive sort of thing. So whenever there is any suspicious activity which is detected by the security personals or the system that we have developed or implemented as a part of CCTV camera, so it sends an alarm. So the best example to relate it to what we are trying to explain is that if you guys have seen Mission Impossible movie of Tom Cruise, any movie you pick it up, so you can see that Tom Cruise tries to break into certain country's sensitive area. So the method he uses to break into their area, that is actually he is breaking the physical barrier, the physical security of that particular country or that particular area. You can say, and you can pick any movie. Now coming to the logical security. Logical security is like since now this when all the thing all we all are connected to internet, so internet we have to put some restrictions, as in the access to certain individuals which are allowed, it should be like need to know basis and not a blanket access. So just for an example, if you take an example of the banking sector, so there are so within there are certain departments. There are HR departments, there are finance department, there are marketing department, there are sales department. The finance department, as we have explained, it's a too sensitive department. So only the finance guys should have the access to financial data and not the HR or marketing or the IT data. So that restriction or that filtration which we put, that is achieved through logical security. And then there are certain other things as well. How we achieve it, what are the systems we implement, what are devices we do it, how do we monitor it. So that would be taken in the later part of the session. Now coming to the data center and DR side. So normally there are two terms, DC and DR. DC is your data center, DR is your data recovery. So, or you can say it as in layman as primary and secondary. Data center is your primary location where you store all the data. When in current scenario, whatever work as an organization or as a bank which performs, so their live data is saved in the data center, and the same data is get real time replicate to the data recovery. So that can be physically in some other geographical location that is performed just to achieve that if something goes on with the data center, so we have a DR site to function our business normally. So the main motto for this is whatever happens, be it natural calamity, be it physical calamity, be it server down, whatever things come, my business should be up and running. So for that, we have this concept as DC and DR. And now for data recovery is something like whenever you have a disastrous situation where say uh, there is a flood in your in one of the banks DC side. So all the and even the DR side. So at that point of time, what they do, they figure out whatever is my critical business, and with that they try to bring that up so that again at least the critical business should be run. So that is something called as a disaster recovery. And there and again there's certain other terms like RTO, RPO, real time monitoring. So all those things are part of it. And any questions so far? Was I too technical for this?
Yes, please, can you repeat again for DC and DR?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
You
I'm, I'm
told
having a very hard time to hear you. Can you be a bit louder?
Please, can you explain again about DC and DR? Can you repeat it? DC and DR?
Okay. So okay.
DC is
So
data
DC is
center.
your data
Yeah,
center
please
and
go ahead.
DR is your data recovery. DC is your primary location, primary site. Okay. DC is your primary location when it comes to the data part or the IT setup or the backup. DR is your secondary site. So whatever you implement, whatever you install, whatever you run in DC, uh, it gets automatically replicated to your DR site. So just understand. If I take an example, I mean I stay in Mumbai in India. So if you take an example of any of the bank location, so normally the trend here is they have their DC in Mumbai, they have their DER in Bangalore. So if something goes, if there's a power cut, if there's a power outage, or if there's a flood-like situation, or any political activities which due to which the data center has been compromised, or there is a loss, or whatever be the reason, it is not running. So the real-time data we have it in DR site, which is operational from Bangalore. So we have just as an IT guys, they just had to connect to the DR site, or you can say as in the connectivity should be transferred to the DR site, and then they have their business up and running. So this is the whole concept of DC and DA.
It's just like a backup.
You can say as a, you can consider it as a backup, but in terms of the entire business.
Okay, thank you.
And it gets switched real time, so there's no manual intervention into it. All these load balancer and what are basically software which switches from your one center to another data center. It happens seamlessly without user knowing it. Okay, so that's the beauty of it, and we'll learn in depth in terms of whenever we try to understand, how this DSDR work, what type of software, hypervisor, cloud service software we do install on such scenarios. Okay, so this is kind of, we are just warming up. We are trying to understand how we normally address this security in a holistic level, and just try to understand certain technicality like CCTV, DSDR, DCDR, and all these scenario. How do you implement for a given cybersecurity plan, building cybersecurity departmental addressable system? Okay, I believe. Do anybody have any questions on this again? Okay, no problem. Let's go ahead. Now let's try to understand logical.
Sorry, excuse me.
Please go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, what is okay? We know what is DCDR now. What is the DSDR? The DS.
Data, okay, data services specifically, when it comes to something like government, when it comes to something like media house, these provide some data services. So that's why data service or data response, data center, data response, data service, data response. So first, these DSDR activities have been implemented by all the governments, be it a state government or a federal government. So they labeled it as a DSDR. And then again, in specifically North America, DSDR is a prominent over DCDR. So again, in interview, if somebody asks you DCDR, you should know that thing as well. But specifically in terms of North America region, DSDR verbose is more prevalent. And these are the challenges in cybersecurity. That's why we can't have uniform certification. There are different certification followed in Asia, different certification followed in North America, different certification followed in Europe as well as Canada. So this way, Canada is more influenced by European majors. I don't know why, but that's a fact. So, if you're in Canada, you need to more understand what are the things which we normally labeled as in terms of DCDR or DSDR. They are pretty much same thing. If you have more services load, then you might call it DSDR. If you are more, talking about entities in existence, then you might call it DCDR. Does that answer your question, sir? Andy?
You answered my question.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
Uh,
thanks. Yes, please.
and even one more thing to that, what Ravina sir has explained. So DSDR, you can also consider it in an way that, just say for an example, that an organization has a cyber attack, and you have, when organization has its data center up and running, it has its data recovery or the DR site up and running, but there is a cyber attack on the organization and its services are down. So at that point of time, as the cybersecurity expert, what they decide is, uh, along with the business, they come into a discussion and they decide that we need to shortlist or going to figure out what are our critical businesses. So like there might be n number of businesses running within the organization, right? But out of those, what are our critical businesses due to which we have our money coming into the organization so that the business should be happening. So at that point of time, they figure out those businesses and they plan to bring or at least isolate those businesses so that those businesses shouldn't be compromised, because ultimately it will lead to the financial impact of the organization. So, so this entire process, you can consider this also as an example of DSDR, or the business critical data recovery in sort of a business that needs to be up and running.
Thanks,
Does that
Anish.
answer your question, Andy?
Yes. Please go, sorry. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So all these DSDR services, they are prioritized. It's not like that, one blanket strategy applied to all, right? Be it something like accounts department or finance data, salary paid data. These are very critical to organization because that's not the money they've already distributed, right? Given in terms of whatever, rights of the employees and all. But when it comes to something like, data of vehicle parking, historical data, which is not really relevant, right? So they might flush it out after 6 months or so, and these data might not get backed up also. So all these things, see, whenever you take a backup, it requires some sort of efforts, time, as well as money. If you, even if you have something like, small 1 TB external hard drive, you might have, everybody might have, right, to back up your normally laptop or desktop data once in a month, one in a 15 months kind of 1 in a 15 days kind of scenario. Now why do we have that extra investment? Just to make sure, in case my laptop or desktop hard disk go bad or there's a failure in that computer, I might have my critical data handy with me and I can start working with my other devices as well. So this way we build this contingency. So treat your external hard drive as your DSDR mechanism, DCDR mechanism. Does that make sense? Who all are have external drives with themselves, and who do take backup of your desktop or laptop? Just a question. Can you hear me, or any challenge? Okay, please go ahead. Hello, I couldn't hear you. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, okay. So, do you have external drive you use in case of some emergencies or some data backup taken regularly?
Yes, I do for my all pictures and videos and that kind of not
Right, right. Mhm. And nowadays, every smartphone also has these things. So you can back up your, all important images to Apple site if you have using Apple phone, Samsung phone, or Motorola phone. They have their own, free Google storage given to you, right? Or free storage given to you by that company, and they do take up automatically backup of your critical application, of your critical, images, photos, movies, and all those things. If you don't configure that thing, those guys have understood, like whatever you take it from your camera is critical, whatever passed out to somebody from WhatsApp might not be critical, so they won't take WhatsApp backup regularly unless and until you mention it. So this is how you plan the DSDR strategy or DCDR strategies, and this is how we're going to understand from our personal experiences as a cybersecurity expert how I can address such strategies, how I can put some priorities to them, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Or am I confusing you?
So again, to add on what Ravindra sir has explained, so just take an example of Google or Gmail. We all have a Gmail account, and it offers 15 GB of space by default. That is free of charge. So whenever whatever be our activity with Google or Gmail, automatically everything goes and stored on gets stored in the Gmail drive. So if we have Drive for documents, we have photos, for our pictures that gets uploaded into the Google Drive. We have videos as well. Then there are certain mails and other stuff. Now, as soon as we reach the 15 GB or 14 GB of limit, we keeps on gets the pop up that your drive is full, your drive is full. So at that point of time, what as an individual, what we decide that we need to filter out, or we need to figure out what photos needs to be kept, what documents needs to be kept, what videos needs to be kept as a backup, which can be used in future purpose. So that that strategy we decided individually. So now just imagine the same situation, on a larger picture as an organization. So as an organization also, when it comes to the data recovery, they figure it out that what are our critical businesses or critical functions that needs to be up and running, and that cannot be compromised come what may. So this is the thought process in both the scenario, as an individual and at an organization. Are you
Great.
guys able to relate this thing?
Yes, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on. Now let's try to understand the logical part of the security as well. Okay. Now we do have surveillance. We do have all those guards and everything mentioned here. But let's say if somebody access your logical assets via wire, via some network outside your office, how to protect that? And that's where the basic logical security should kick in. So logical security consists of software safeguard for an organizational systems, including user identification, password access, authorization, authentication access rights, and authority levels. And we're going to understand each of these things in detail in just the coming slides. These measures are to ensure that only authorized users are able to perform the actions or access information on a network or a workstation. It is a subset of computer security. So when just Anush sir, as he explained, there are restrictions in terms of access given to a particular resources of your organizations. Let's say a typical software developer working at Infosys or working at GuruSchool, and whenever he logs in the morning, he get access to a particular data, including his email box on his server, including his own leaves applied, approved, and blah 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 things. But when it comes to HR might get access to all these leaves applied, leaves approved for n number of employees. Might be a HR of IT department have all IT department's detail handy to him or her, but an individual employee might not have, right? And these are how we create restrictions, or we start creating restrictions, so that the information is shared on need to know basis only. The logical controls are preventive controls that may apply technology, software, and system prohibit unwanted access to informations within the computer system, within the database, within the knowledge base the organizations do have. Non-physical access control are also referred as a logical controls, and we're going to understand logical control in depth in a minute. This will prevent information assets from being accessed electronically. These are basically, you can also understand the website restriction access. A VP working at a company might have unrestricted access to all the website, but a developer working in a software development department might not have access to the news portal, might not have access to the any websites which are basically distributing streams like Netflix and all those things. So again, depending upon that organizational policies and processes, we do build a kind of restrictive access strategy for a given department, for a given employee and his hierarchy within that organization. Logical controls that can prevent access to an organization informational assets include authentication. So you normally provide a user ID password. So authentication of unauthorized users for being permitted to access of company system. So authentications restrict you to access certain digital assets based on your clarification, based on your security clearance, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Could you understand the words I'm using right now with discussions for logical security? Anybody have any confusion? Any question for me? Please state yes or no. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
Me, no problem. So far, no problem.
No problem. Please, state your thing, means, have problem, or you understood, or you might need some, ask questions and all. Okay. The response makes it more kind of, part of a group. Otherwise, I'm keep talking, and, you might, I might miss certain queries, right? So please do stop me. Okay. And please give a response, because, that way, even I feel like you are, involved in the overall discussions. Okay. Let's this be a discussions rather than one-way traffic. You can also share your thought process. You can also share your learning. Okay. Okay, let me continue with the next slide. Now let's try to understand these logical controls. These are the ways and means how we control the access, right? And there are certain leakages. There are certain ways and means what the bad people or the wrong people might try to gain access to one way or the another, or they do a thievery in terms of digital assets, right? And that's what we're going to address in terms of, so what are logical control we can implement. We discussed about user authentication, right? The way we work is like, even through this Zoom session, this is not common to all, right? This Zoom session is restricted to whoever enrolled. Even if you are enrolled in the last batch, you can still join this batch, and we can continue evolving, continue understanding these logical restrictions or user identification for a given team meet, right? And that's how we normally do these restrictive authorization for a given digital asset. You can treat these Zoom meeting as a digital asset, that YouTube recording as a digital asset, and so on, so forth. Some of the digital asset we might leave common for public, like those YouTube videos, like those movies which are older than 50 years or so. You can watch them anytime, anywhere. And this is how this copyright or patent law works. The movies are normally copyrighted for 50 years. So after 50 years, it comes to an open domain. So what is an open domain? Anybody and everybody can access those digital assets. Okay, and this is how the user control, user identification, username and password restrict everybody from using or utilizing such digital asset. When it comes to news media, those are public news or public media, or they call it open media. So all that data and content is open to consume by each and everybody. And that's why we can watch the news, we can view the news as and when we get a time, as and when we require that. And that's how some of them can be an open data stream, some of them can be a restricted data stream. As a cybersecurity expert, we need to understand these things. So what are open data, what are restricted data, and how we normally given access to such data, and how we categorize such data. Then comes to password management. Whenever we restrict user, the next thing comes the key. So give access, we'll give a key, right? And here for a digital or intangible asset, we normally give a username and password. So Ravindra can be user and password can be 123. Well, it's really bad password. Believe me, the maximum used passwords are 123 ASD, or 1234 ASD, or A capital SD @ 123. These are normally common password. So whenever you want to access some account, please try with these password. And believe me, as far as American Security Journal, these are the maximum used password. Even many of the guys use this password for their banking. We shouldn't, but yes, many of these guys use, and that's why their account get hacked, their money gets stolen, their digital assets get stolen left and right. So please remember this thing, and we're going to learn in depth in terms of how we can manage our password, how soon we can change our password, and how we should have different password for different digital services, be it a banking, be it a Facebook, be it a Twitter. Don't carry single password for multiple services. The passwords are generated to protect access from outside unwanted users of information. This method that is applied to only enabling access to those who are authorized. And that's why these restrictions, right? Whenever you're giving password, which can be easily understood, easily guessed by others, these password make it a kind of vulnerable password. So your account is vulnerable to be accessed by anybody and everybody in the world. That's why we need to restrict our password more, and we need to keep changing at least, now for all critical services at least once in a month. Password have certain characteristics that will allow them to become more preventive than others, and this is how we call it strong password, and we'll learn about strong password in a few slides. Okay, but do you got the idea of how passwords are normally managed, how they restrict these digital intangible assets to be accessed by each and everybody? Have you understood, sir, madam?
Yes, sir.
Antara ma'am, I really couldn't hear you. I don't know. I've seen that mic and all those things, but
Yeah,
I couldn't hear you. Could you please repeat?
yes, sir. I understand.
You understood, right? Okay, great, great, no problem. So, then comes the network firewall. Now let's try to understand these things progressively. The password and authentication for everybody access mostly via internet. Even we have a local network, means the networks without any wireless systems or wired network as we normally call it, right? Then we have something called firewalls. Now whenever a physical network get access of an internet or a wireless network, normally nowadays due to smartphone revolution we are using network wirelessly more than the wired network. But if you go, let's say 15 or 20 years before, there were no such wireless network, or it's very far and few users of these mobile users or satellite phone and so on and so forth. So at that time we had a kind of wired network at that time. So every computer used to get connected via wires. Even your ASDL networks, your telephone line based networks or internet is a wire network. But when it's come to a wireless router, we switch it from a wired network to wireless network. And all such points are normally, we use a software called firewall. Why we call it firewall? Because in case one or another entity catch a fire, it shouldn't reach to the other. Catching fire in the sense some damaging scenario happening, some hacking, some network leakages, it shouldn't carry forward to the other part of the firewall. That's why it's called firewall. It's like protecting the fires from one unit to another, and that's why they've started naming it as a firewall. So firewall is a kind of gateway or a kind of switching from one type of network, wireless to Wi-Fi, or even between Wi-Fi, wireless networks. We normally use firewalls in between various wireless network as well. So you normally have a firewall within your home. Whenever you connect your modem or a wireless network to a wired network, or even one wireless network can be separated from the another wireless network with the help of this firewall. Parts of computer system or networks that are designed to block unauthorized access while permitting outward communication. So a good number of firewalls only you can use outward, so from in to out, not from out to in. And these are the normal way these firewall are configured when it comes to ADSL lines terminating at your home. So you can access from your home to outside, but nobody normally can access from outside to inward. But yes, there are ways and means to configure that as well within the firewalls. So there's a default setting and there's a configuration you can do, and so on and so forth. There are quite a frequent questions asked, what do you mean by firewall? So please try to write down a script or answer to a question if interviewer asks you, what is a firewall? And believe me, you should be able to explain in your own word. The theoretical definition is, wherever there is a switching of networks, we normally have a gateway or a switching mechanism, which more normally referred as a firewall. The example of firewall, you use firewall in every wireless modem or ADSL modem at our home. And that's a kind of simplest type of firewall. When it's come to an organizations, you might have too many servers. Servers are basically who services data to the others. Server is a kind of bigger system with number of processor, number of RAM, number of storage at a much higher level than a normal desktop or laptop, which normally serves a data, web page, or certain type of information to the receivers, to the attached people called client. So we have a server and we have a client. We normally have firewall attached to all the networks wherever there is a conversion from one type of network to another type of network. Do you think you could answer a question, what is firewall? Can anybody try it right now? If I ask you a question, what is firewall? How you could answer? These are the interview repetitive questions. So please either write down a script or something. Yes, Jay, sir, please go ahead.
Firewall is, I think, that's what I understand, that is a switching system between the
Switching system between two networks. Very rightly said.
two networks.
Yeah, very rightly said. It can be wireless, Wi-Fi, immaterial, but yes, switching system between two networks. Very correctly said. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let's go to the encryption. Now, encryption is also a very discussed topic, but really not clearly understood. Okay. Now, let's try to understand data encryption here. Whenever you,
So, Ravind sir, before we move on to data encryption,
sure,
I would like to add some points to
please.
network firewalls. So as he has said that, yeah, you might receive a question in the interview that what is firewall. So if we talk about technicality answer of it, so firewalls are basically used for packet filtration. And when we say packet, so packet is a technical term for data which is getting transported from one network to another network. Now, if we relate it with in real time, so let's make an understanding in your mind with two examples: physical security and logical security. When a person tries to enter your home from, say, just consider it as an example, that if I want to enter your home from India, so what are the levels of checks that I have to go through at the airport? I have to go through the physical check or the immigration part. Then there would be, once I reach your city, there would be a perimeter of your area or the geography where you guys are staying. Then there would be a security check where security would be frisking me. Then there would be a physical door, which I have to pass on through, the access door. If I am allowed to go through, then only I'll be allowed. And then probably I'll reach to you. So if you see, if AJ wants to reach to a person, he has to go through at least 5 to 6 levels of security. Now consider the same example in logical security. Logical security, the packet or the data which leaves the sender's network and enters to the receiver's network. So it has to go a lot of filtration, out of which one filtration is the firewall. So if the packet or the data which is allowed to transfer into the receiver's network with respect to the IP address, with respect to the protocols that have been configured into it, then only it will pass on through that firewall. Else, the firewall will drop that packet. So this is the basic understanding. If you guys can relate it to the firewall, so if you can see in this example, you can see a person standing here, he has a connectivity with the internet, then there's a good traffic firewall and the private network. So this good traffic, here the organization's network start. So I am connected, I have to connect to the internet, enter to the good traffic area or the traffic area. And again, we can have a lot of discussion on to the good traffic, what traffic constitutes as a good traffic, bad traffic, what are the type of restrictions, security checks and other stuffs. That can be done later on. So once I enter the good traffic, so at least so that means my data is allowed to enter the good traffic. Once I enter it, if my data would allow to pass on to the firewall, then only I'll enter your network. If not, my packet would be dropped. So that is one of the major component of logical security. So see, don't consider security as something new which you guys are not aware. Whatever you guys are trying to relate it, or we are explaining you, try to relate it in terms of the physical world. What are the filtration, or what are the layers of security, or layers of steps that we need to follow to reach to a certain destination. A similar manner, the same thing is followed in the logical security area as well. So far so good.
We're going to learn this in a 55th slide.
Can we call a gateway a firewall too? Can we refer
So
to a gateway as a
firewall
firewall?
can be, and the firewall can be of lot of type. There are network firewall, there are gateway firewall, there are application layer firewall. So within firewall there are a lot of different categories. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware. As is the OSI layer. So
No,
OSI
no,
layer is
we're
the
going to address that, sir. We're going to, learn that as well. Right now,
okay,
let's
okay,
try to understand basic concept of firewall. Okay, we're going to understand the types of firewall after we've done the OSI layer. We're going to understand
okay.
there are some infrastructure layers we categorize with the different infrastructure, like operating
Hmm.
system, like firmware, software, application layers. So there are different logical layers, but right now we are trying to understand the logical controls on a holistic level. Okay, let's not go into the depth. Let's try to understand. Right now there is a firewall kind of software or a hardware which is responsible for blocking either incoming or outgoing traffic from the internet to your computer to your network, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is the current understanding is good. We are gradually going to increase our thought process in terms of, so what is the network firewall, what is the application firewall, and so on and so forth.
and
Okay.
and and the gateway firewall is also the firewall only. I mean, it has another term named as gateway firewall since it is as the entry level or the perimeter level. So perimeter considered at the gate. Hence, it is also termed as the normal firewalls are also termed as the gateway firewall. It has, I mean, in terms of functionality or the processes, it is one and the same thing. Any questions? Guys, as Ravindra sir has mentioned that respond to the queries if you guys have understood or not. So let's make this an interactive session. It is like me and Ravindra sir are only speaking and you guys are at least acknowledge it. Yes or no? So then only we'll also have an interest to continue with this session.
I don't know. I don't know if you hear me. If I talk, do you hear me?
Yeah, now you're audible.
Okay, now I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Andy.
Thanks.
Okay. So
Ravindra,
let's.
sir, are you going to, excuse me, sir, are you going to provide all notes?
Yes, sir. I'm going to share this presentation with you. Okay. Let's start
Okay,
one by.
thank
Let
you.
me share the presentation as of today, and then we'll
No,
move on
no,
to the different what you can say. Oh, come on. Sorry. See, we are at which slide? Oh, come on. We are at slide number 11.
logical controls.
Yeah, logical controls. And right now we are started understanding slide number 55. So we are jumping guns here because it's complicated thing. See, we need to understand the tools and the instrument, right, of cybersecurity. Firewall is one of the most used tool, and we all use day in day out. Be it your smartphone. Smartphone has the firewall built into your Android operating system, which is not configurable by you. It has to be configured by the mobile service provider. So wherever you start working with, let's say Southwestern Bell, or you're using AT&T network, these network guys, they configure your smartphone firewall. But yes, there is a firewall, and these are all we use day in day out, but still we don't know it. So right now we are just getting an introduction to these different logical controls. Okay, we're going to learn each of these logical control, how to implement, how to use, what it looks like, and all those things as well. Okay, so please bear with me. I don't want to start complicating matter on the day two, and then oh man, that's too difficult. Please don't feel like that. We're going to make it easy for you, and we're going to learn together, right? And that's why please do respond. That really help us to encourage to teach you more, to discuss more. Okay, chalo, let's move on. Now the encryption thing. This is also a highly confused scenario for a layman, but for a cybersecurity expert, we need to understand what is encryption. Okay, now let's try to understand a scenario. Whenever we are young, we used to communicate with our either girlfriend or boyfriend in some cryptic word or cryptic tones. Everybody did that. Anybody who haven't did that here? Oh, come on.
Yes, just like a sign
Exactly.
language.
And that's what we normally call as an encryption. So why do we use encryption? So that whatever communication between two party can't be understood by third. As simple as that. And this is the basic encryption. Other than that, in our good old days, we used to have those matchbox with a cable in between, and we used to speak, through those matchbox communication types, where even if there's a person who is very near to the middle point, he or she couldn't able to listen to those. And that's how the encryption thought process started, a communication between two parties not to be shared with the third. And in the data, whenever data we call as an asset, right? Let's say my salary data shouldn't be shared with anybody rather than me myself, right? And similarly, whenever the organizations want to communicate the salary improvement, my appraisal increment and all those things, that shouldn't be communicated to anybody. So what they do, they send me an encrypted email or encrypted message. Encrypted in the sense you normally encode it in a way, and then at a user end you have to decode it, and then you will get the exact message. Now there are ways and means and encryptions which we're going to learn, I think around slide 15 or 16. Encryption is the first technicality we're going to learn within our cybersecurity parameters, and that's how we'll progressively understand. So let's try to understand encryption, a security method that applies the information that is encoded and can only be accessed or decoded or decrypted by the consumer with a correct encryption key. Now encryption key can be something like, I know a French language, my friend also know French language, and we are talking freely, loudly with the other persons who don't know French, or which I believe they don't know French. But it might be a possibility that out of 50, one or two might know French. So there's a leakage here. Okay, so for that matter, only foreign language might not be a right example for encryption. Something like whenever I send a message, it's a good old story between I think George IV and his wife. What they used to do, whatever message they used to send, they used to add some sort of a addition to the letters. So when I write A, I might write C. So like two letters shift. It's called character shift. And this is the first encryption which we had a concrete proof of communication between George IV, the King of Europe, and his wife, which is staying in some island or some another part of the Europe. And they used to communicate via these letters called character shifts. And they used to write this number in previous letters. So when George the Fourth used to write fourth at the bottom of previous letter, the next letter, whatever he used to send to his wife or vice versa, they'll add 4. So instead of A, I'll write B, C, D, E. So every word with the letter A written as E, every E will be written as the fourth character afterwards. And this way they used to write letters which were not understood by the many others. And this is the process they have built. And that's the kind of first example. I think this was in 1800 or something. We found the, what you can say, concrete proof of encryption. Yes, please go ahead. And this is also called as a ciphering. Ciphering in the sense you decipher the data. You change the appearance of the data, but the data is there, right? And that's how data encryption is a process of encoding information. So the only recipient with the ability to decipher the text can do so. And this is how the actual encryption works even in a digital world. In a digital world, we normally go ahead with the ASCII characters. So our A is letter 65, capital A is 65, capital B is 66, and so on and so forth. And we have a specific relative number to each and every word, each and every number given on the keyboard. That's called ASCII characters. You might heard ASCII, American Standard Information Encryptions, Information Interchange, sorry, ASCII, American Standard Information Interchange. And we started building these rules in the late 1900, and that's how we started encrypting. But then we found that these keys can be stored, or how many ASCII numbers you're adding, so that can be stored, copied by somebody or can be heard by somebody. So we added second layer of encryption. So first layer is basically just encoding with 3 additional digits. The additional number is whenever you do this encryption, subtract 2 again, and you can try to do these things as an encryption. Okay, let's not go ahead to the levels of encryption as of now. We're going to learn these encryptions and the level of encryption as well. But right now, I believe you understood the encryption processes. Anybody confused in encryption or decryption? There are different ways and means to achieve it. Let's not go there, but let's try to understand the basics right now, so that we can learn these in detail encryption and decryption after some slide. Okay, does anybody have any questions in data encryptions right now?
No, not for me.
Good, no problem. Sure, let me move on. So access control. Now there's a list of access control. Whenever you give access to somebody, you should have a list, so that you might have a kind of table where access given to Ravindra on 3rd March, access revoked on 5th April or so and so that I know whoever can consume this data which is available, whoever can access this digital assets. So we normally maintain tables that tells a computer operating system who has the right to access it. And we normally verify these access with the password verification kind of services. The rights vary per user and allows them to particularly objective, for example, accessing a file or a directory or individual file. So these are normally file-based access. Even in Windows, whenever you install a new thing, the Windows might ask you, is it to be used by all the users, or just the users who have installed these things, or just the administrator level. So there are level of this access list within an operating system. An operating system maintains the list of access and access control list. Okay. Then we have digital certificate. This is quite new thing which is started after 20K challenges, where we have a digital certificate shown by the websites, shown by the individuals to the certificate authority, so that they can they can give a concrete proof of their identity, which is authorized by some state or federal governments. So digital certificate is an electronic copy, or you can call it electronic password, that allows a person or organizations to exchange data securely over the internet using public key infrastructure. We're going to learn what is public key, what is private key, and what are the different keys we normally use with our communication. Right now, just try to understand, if I have a certificate, and certificate normally labeled by a number in terms of computer languages, and that number they're talking to be used as a public key, or that number, let's say if that number 3, then I can cipher my words A to E and so on and so forth. If that number is, let's say, 4866, well, my communication is going to get deciphered by that number. In computer, we normally have data width as a standard, and then we normally apply public key within that data width. We're going to learn about this data width and particular key in few slides. But just understand, there are some ciphering standard mechanism in terms of federal and state communication as well, and this is normally we call that a digital certificates. Now in today's world, we normally have each website, each data servicing company certified by these digital certificates, or you normally get a message, can't identify the database server, please don't access this server, and so on and so forth, or can't find digital certificate. And that's why the antivirus like Norton, antivirus like McAfee, or various antivirus services gives you a warning saying, please don't access this site, we couldn't find its digital certificate. It means that it's a stray site. The site is not verified, validated by the state and federal governments. Does that make sense? Anybody have any confusion over here? Now, for all these things, we need to learn and understand a couple of digital assets thought process, and then who are controlling which type of assets, be it operating system, be it a software, So there's an operating system based control, there's an application system based control, and so on and so forth. This is the way you might understand. There's your smartphone. You start your smartphone with your fingertip or with some numbered password. Now you gain access to an operating system of your smartphone. But when you try to log into your bank, it asks its own username password, and you might need to use your fingerprint again. But then this is kind of second level of authorization and authentication at an application layer, at a software level. So the banking software, access is different from your operating system access. Does that make sense? Could you understand what are the different level of access we are talking about?
Yes.
Is it getting too technical for you? Specifically, Shilpa ma'am or Antara ma'am? Is
So
it
far,
confusing?
so far it's understandable.
It's
It's
understanding. Okay,
not,
good.
yeah.
Thank you. So, please speak out if you couldn't understand anything. Okay, I'll try to be as frank and as, forthcoming as possible. Okay, let me move on.
Thank you.
Now let's try to understand how do you address this, logical security. Okay, and there are some standard way to address this. But there could be, I have, 6 element mentioned. There could be 8 element categorized by a company. There could be only 3 elements can be taken as a strategic initiative for developing cybersecurity plan, or as a, strategic initiative for understanding how do you address your threats. This is again mostly circumstantial or scenario based. That's why this can change. But I'm sharing a standard plan of 6 different entities which we normally address while developing a cybersecurity plan. First is identify key assets and threats. So first, within a given organizations, as we've just discussed, we can't secure all the assets. The cost will be quite high. So what we define, we try to identify key asset or a critical assets and critical threats. First, we normally identify key assets and try to address a list of key assets to be protected. Then we go and at a second round or at a second go at it, we might address some critical threats which are more prominent. They can occur in more probabilitical figures. The first step in developing cybersecurity plan is to identify assets you are protecting. This step involves active consideration of your business context, as well as asset and risk assessment and threat management processes. Now, what is a business context? If you are a bank, you might, your banking account data, your banking account, money availability or monetary figures attached to an account are the most critical to the business. And nowadays, mostly customer transact in a digital economy rather than the bills and the notes, right? So in that scenario, we have to protect these digital assets more securely for a bank. But when it comes to a nook and corner shop, his financial assets might not be that big. He might maintain a physical ledger or a physical register with a notebook and pen. So that assets can be a physical asset. So we don't have to really consider in terms of his, digital assets as well. He might use the manual, what you can say, manual receipt machine whenever he give receipt to his customer. So all his normal transaction are written down or normally maintained manually with a register and pen. So for him, his critical assets can be, all his inventory, all his costly items within his inventory. If you look at from a perspectives, if you go to a mall, right, there are some entities which are highly secured, which are costly in nature, or which are can be kind of delicate items, right? They are more secure than the big items which can't be lifted and carried by a thief or something like that. Or cheap items, they normally can be placed near the counter, near the door of the mall or something like that. Again, for a retailer, every item is a critical, and that's why they try to have all these restricted access to the inventory. This step involves active consideration of your business contents as well as assets and risk assessment and a threat management process. So for bigger item, the threat is less because let's say if you're selling a car, you can park the car in the lot and have some security camera. That's more than it because every cars need a key to start and all those things. But if you're selling something like, let's say gold jewelry, it's very light to carry, so you can't keep it in open. You normally keep it wrapped under the glass cabinets, so everybody can see, but we can normally let them touch only if they are willing to buy. So something like that. So based on the asset risk assessment and a threat management processes, we build this security as per the need basis. Active physical security or priority, and that's how we normally activate the physical security and the priority depending upon the assessment risk and the business context as well. So integrate the periodic audits on a physical security with the escalation matrix so that any challenges is reported with the knowledge archival. So what we do, we learn from our mistake. In case if some jewelry is still stolen with all those cameras, the glass, coverage and everything, then we are lacking something. So what we do, we escalate or we build some better security, like after we might have something like a metal scanner at the door. So if somebody is walking out with a gold jewelry, the scanner might beep or scanner might let you know. Then we might request that person to disclose if he has any metal ornament he or she is carrying with him or her. And that's how we can escalate our security to a new level. Matrix can be understood as a typical table. So table of number of items, number of crucial items, and number of threats. If both are high, then we need to really consider it as a high security, high critical item, and so on. So, does anybody have any questions on key assets and threats? Have you understood the basic meaning of these?
To me, it's clear to me. Do you hear me? Okay, yes. But I'm wondering why we have to consider the physical assets first instead of the data and the software.
I couldn't hear you, sir. Could you please repeat that?
I'm wondering why we have to, when we're trying to develop our plan, why we have to consider the physical assets first.
Okay, sir. That's a really great question. Let's say you have software on your laptop, you have all your banking passwords and everything saved on your laptop, right? And if somebody steals your laptop, what do you think? What should be our response to that? Because my laptop is my key assets, right? I have all my banking username, password stored there. I have my Netflix, I have my Amazon account password stored there. So whenever anybody steals my laptop, he or she can access my accounts. He or she can transfer amounts from my banking to his or her own account. Same thing with your smartphone. And that's why we need to make sure I need to consider my physical security to my key assets every time, or I might to revisit these critical assets in a progressive manner. In good old years, I used to secure my laptop. In nowadays, I need to add more security to my smartphones. You might have a fingerprint unlocking, you might have a fingerprint plus numeric unlocking, and vice versa. Why do you want to protect the access to your smartphone? Because all these banking information, all these your purchasing and selling information is normally there on your smartphone. That's why it's a critical asset, or it's a key asset as we normally call it, and that's why we need to protect it. Does that answer your question, sir?
No, it's very clear. Thank you.
Okay. One more example to that. So, and just imagine. Recently, I mean, in the previous slide, I had explained that data recovery. Correct. So, as I mentioned, that if there's a cybersecurity attack that has been done on the organization, and the organization figures out that I need to bring my critical businesses up. So this is one of the key steps to figuring it out. What are your critical businesses? in that business, what are your critical assets that needs to be 24/7 up and running, even if there is a cybersecurity incident in the organization. So this identification, configuring, so this cannot be done at the crisis situation. For that, we have to ready at this point of time only. So at the crisis situation, we just have to trigger an alarm, and then all the systems would be isolated from the entire attack. So hence, it is considered as the configuring or developing a cybersecurity plan around your critical assets. And asset doesn't only mean laptops. It can be any physical asset when it comes to the IT infrastructure. Also, consider an example as you have your own laptop and there is a head of the business or the CEO, he has his laptop. Both the laptops are compromised. So as an cyber security professional or as a security guy, whose laptop should be prioritized in terms when it comes to the fixing part? Will it be yours or will it be the CEOs or the business head's laptop? Andy, that's a question to you.
Yes, I said we have to consider the CEO first or the business owner.
Right.
Or the business manager.
Yes. So for that, we have to, at the time of implementation or setup only, we have to figure it out. What are my critical businesses in that business? What are my critical assets in that critical assets? Who are the critical personals who would be using the those assets in that business? So these identification, plan of action, and drafting is done at the initial level only. So that at the crisis situation, because I won't be having that much of time to interact to it or react at that point of time. I'll just have to trigger a button and all my cybersecurity plan would come up. Hence, all this play is going around. Does that answer your question?
Clear, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anu sir,
So-
I have a question.
Please
Can
go
you
ahead.
repeat one, please?
Please go
Anu
ahead.
sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Can you repeat this one, please?
No, which one,
The
ma'am?
complete example you want?
The last one. The Anu sir, what he has said, can you repeat that one, please?
Anu sir,
Yeah. So see, when it comes to critical assets, so critical assets cannot be only laptop. It is all. It can be anything which is used in the IT infrastructure. Critical assets. So now take an example. That's an example what I've given to Andy. Consider you have your own laptop. You're also part of the organization. There's a business head or the CEO. He has his laptop. Even he is part of the organization. If both the laptops gets compromised or damaged, so as an cybersecurity expert, as an IT expert, whose laptop should be prioritized when it comes to fixing of it? Will it be yours or will it be business heads?
Obviously, business head.
Definitely. So and how we jump to that decision? Because we figure it out that business head's laptop is the critical assets, then yours. Correct. So
Yes.
again in criticality also there is prioritization. So even you are also part of cybersecurity. Your laptop is also critical. But when
Yes.
it comes to prioritizing, it is a business head. So that is how and these things are done at the time of implementation only. Because when there is an attack or when you are under attack or a cybersecurity compromise incident that has happened, at that point of time, you won't be getting that much of time to make a plan, implement it, deploy it, and react to it. So at that point of time, you have to just be on your toes and hit a button that will trigger the cybersecurity backup.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, ma'am?
No, thanks. I'm good.
Thank you.
now these are part of prioritization. How do you prioritize? How you start, identifying these key assets and threats, and then prioritization. That's our second topic. Okay. So after assessing your assets or having decided the critical assets list, we normally, attach priority to this list. So as we discussed, like CEO laptop is more, what you can say, critical than, all these executives which are working in a company. And that's how we normally prioritize the assets. We normally, identify first the key risk, then the high risk, medium risk, and so on and so forth. And similarly, threats. After assessing your assets, threats, and risk, the next step is to prioritize them with the right approach depending upon the context of your organizations. Here are the questions you need to answer to help identify top risks. What are the risks or threats to your organization? What are the main concerns of your organizations regarding cybersecurity? Which risks and threats would harm your organizations more? Now, if you want to take an analysis of these things, or you want to understand a prioritization, please have a look at White House website, where they have prioritized these asset risk and threats in terms of presidents first, chief of staffs after that, then different ministerials candidates, or different ministries, or like state of the heads, military, and so on and so forth. They have a great hierarchy of all these prioritization addressed there. Please do have a look at White House cybersecurity risk assess prioritization. You can search on a Google and you'll get to the White House site, where you will have answer to all these questions. What are the risks or threats in your organizations? What are the main concerns of your organizations regarding cybersecurity? Which risk and threats would harm your organizations more? Which are less prioritized? Again, these are the priorities we are talking about. It's not like that, we are ignoring everything else. Only the priority is bit on a lesser level. You can then go and determine countermeasures, treatments of each of risk and threats identified, and then classify them from the easy wins to the hardest to achieve as well. So the addressal mechanism. And this is how we normally build a kind of threat assessment matrix, a kind of table we are talking about. So actually, we're going to study about the threat assessment matrix in depth after certain slides. But to understand right now, every criticality has to be prioritized, has to be assessed in terms of how to address, what to address, and so on. So, okay, and as Anish sir have clearly explained in terms of CEO versus an executive criticality for a given laptop assets. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on prioritization of asset? Are we good?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. No
So
problem.
go, it can go on.
Yeah, sure. Set achievable goals. Now, this is another thing, because some of these cybersecurity experts, they started building goals which are beyond practicability. Like everybody who comes in the organizations, please check their laptops of correctly working. Please check their laptop for all these security softwares are updated or not, and so on and so forth. But some of them we might have achieved due to remote working enhancement and all. But quite a few goals we need to let it slide under the carpet, because we can't practically implement. Theory is another thing, practical is other thing. Now here we need to be practical. We need to set the goals which we can achieve. Normally in a typical scenario, the goals we can achieve within 6 months are normally set as an achievable goals, and it's just a thumb rule. It's a cool to aim high on your goals, but achievable goals are more important for your company for a realistic measure than along a list of policy and procedure that don't help. While a cybersecurity plan should identify all should identify all activities that you would like to undertake, you need to identify those goals that will be truly achievable. Some companies at the beginning of the year set goals to completing a task within a 6 months, but they never complete that in a 1 year. And these are kind of impossible goals, or even the employees are not supporting those goals, and this can be a challenge for implementing cybersecurity policy. Start with the basic, the goals that are easily achievable. Remember, cybersecurity policies are a strong foundation that will drive the rest of cybersecurity efforts. So we need to start somewhere. So start discussing these things with the employee, making them understand why it's important for them as well as organization. Focus on the most important high risk area first, and then get down to the get them out of the way, and then address them as a matter of priority. So we normally build a priority, then we set up some goals. Okay, let's revise from the start. First, we've started understanding key assets. Then we prioritize these key assets and threats. Then we set the goals to achieve security to these assets. Now, document your cybersecurity policy. So whatever we have decided, we need to
Excuse me.
document them somewhere. It's known the fact that small businesses often operate more by word of mouth than institutional knowledge or huge documentation than operating out of the books. So if somebody says, "Hey Ravinder, could you please check your laptop for updates?" I'll say, yeah, give me a minute. I'll just do right click and update the laptop. But if there is a policy document came in the mail about 60 pages saying, please update your laptop regularly or this or that, nobody will read. And that's a fact. Matter of fact means that's how the organizations or the human works, right? So that's why the more stress is on the word of mouth or guiding from a buddy or guiding for your superior and so on and so forth. Document your cybersecurity policies to make sure we have these artifacts saying this is the policy we have thought of, these are the key assets, and this is how we're going to implement policy on those assets. It is known fact that small business often operate more by word of mouth and institutional knowledge rather than operating out of books. Cybersecurity is one area where it's essential to document your protocols. Protocols are the rules, processes, policies, and every procedure. Having a cybersecurity plan avails your opportunity to have a detailed toolkit that is in line with your cybersecurity best practices and policies. Now, this is implemented by state as well as federal enactment. So there are typical law. When you start a business, you need to have a cyber policy. Writing this policy may be a Herculean task. However, some organizations are best known for their expertise in technical business writing. You can hire services of any of these organizations like GuruSchool. We do provide cybersecurity as a service, cybersecurity plan building and implementation as a service to various organizations. And you can mention it on your resume also in case if you are working with GuruSchool, like I worked with GuruSchool as a cybersecurity assessment auditor, cybersecurity assessment architect, and so on and so forth. So these 6 steps we need to follow. There are 2 more. Link goes to business objectives. Your cybersecurity policies must be pro-business. So what is critical to business has to be prioritized within your policies. If you are selling shoes, your built shoes or shoes created are more critical to your business than the parking. So we'll spend more on securing the goods which are produced than the parking, than any other entity for your organization. And this is how we need to build our policies. Identify the business reason for each goal earlier highlighted. For example, it's better to indicate that a firewall is indeed not just for the sake of it, but also so that staff can easily access the data they need to do their jobs. Don't ignore the business side of your cybersecurity plan, because every of your plan will have an impact on your organizations. Even the top boss might not give you release the payment for procuring a firewall unless and until you guide them why we are using firewall, how it will protect your digital asset, and so on and so forth. So linking goals to business objectives are much critical to implementing of your cybersecurity plan. Again, building cybersecurity plan is not a ribbon cutting ceremony. You need to keep evolving it. So there will be audits or reviews per week, per month, depending upon the criticality of the business, depending upon the criticality of your assets. We keep improving our cybersecurity policies and processes. We also do tests for vulnerabilities. Any new vulnerabilities has to be addressed. Like somebody is trying to hack your network from outside is a vulnerability we found. So we need to secure our network more with a basically better firewall, with a better firewall policies and procedures. Having done all, don't forget to have a test run. We need to validate whatever we've implemented. You need to find out if your cybersecurity plan works or not. Are the critical assets are safeguarded? Then how about non-critical assets? Are they also safeguarded? And so on and so forth. Waiting to find out when a cyber crime occurs will be too late and too risky, or there are bigger damages, right? Bigger punitive challenges there. But if you do it proactively, it's a small price to pay. Therefore, test your plan. How do you do this? At least once a year, hire a cybersecurity expert from outside to perform a full assessment of your cybersecurity plan and make sure that your plan is still relevant, up to date, and effective. Many organizations now have a cybersecurity budget for updating their firewalls, updating their antivirus softwares, and so on and so forth. We're going to understand each and every of these tools in depth in the coming days. Some organizations even hire ethical hackers to attempt to breach their system, or they pay the hackers to breach their system from outside without giving any details, or with giving some details to them. And we're going to understand how ethical hackers work, how do you hire these ethical hackers, and how you can be one of them. Cyber threats are always evolving, so your computer security plan should also evolve too. The conclusion: a cybersecurity plan sacrifices the security policies, procedure, and controls required to protect an organization against threats and risks. A cybersecurity plan can also outline the specific step to take to respond to a breach. Okay, and this is how it's a kind of continuous evolution process. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on these? Am
Yes,
I
yes.
going
I
fast,
have a
or
question.
my speed is okay?
No, I have a question.
Please go ahead, sir.
As per number 4, prioritize your goals. So, what kind of goals and tasks?
Okay. We set achievable goals, right? Let's
Sorry,
say,
set
uh,
agile.
yeah, I'll give you an example. Like we discussed that, what you can say, laptops to be a key assets to your company. Now, how do you secure your laptop? First of all, you have a kind of lock and key to the laptop. On all your laptop there's a small a hole where it have shown a lock symbol near that hole. It's a physical laptop security lock. In good old days, we used to purchase a lock for around $10 or so, which used to lock your laptop to your desk, so that nobody can pick up and run. Have anybody seen these locks? No? Okay, let me show it on the website. Basically, how these laptop physical locks, what we call locks. Okay. Oh, sorry, I need to share this thing. Okay, give me a minute, please. I'm sharing this thing for you. Oh, come on, share. Okay. Could you see a lock here? Okay, I'm in India, so it's showing me 419 rupees. That's kind of 47, some $7, $6 kind of scenario. And this is one of the way we used to carry these things with us. Believe me, whenever you travel, let's say if you are sitting on a public place, you used to lock this thing. This thing goes in your laptop. There's a small hole there, and this is the key to open that laptop. And this is really a heavy-duty iron cable. Could you see this thing on your screen?
Yes.
The laptop lock.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Now this is a physical security address to each of your laptop. So whenever enterprise rent a car given me a Dell XPS laptop, which used to cost around $800 at that time, they gave this lock to me, so that if Ramindra wants to work on a Sunday from Barnes and Noble bookstores, so what he'll do, he'll basically tie up this laptop to the actual desk where he's working, so that even if he steps out to grab a coffee, he'll get a coffee and then he'll start working again with his laptop. And there's a lock and key. This is kind of physical security we are talking about. Nowadays, we have IP tracking, or we have MAC address tracking, and there are other ways to track your laptop nowadays. And every laptop now, we have a SIM card or some way of networking built into it, so that the laptop can be traced via some network tools. So the use of these physical locks have been reduced to not so needed kind of scenario. But still, if you look at some elderly laptop, they normally lock this laptop like this. You might have seen this in Barnes and Nobles or any other bookstores or churches also. If you visit churches and all, you might find such laptops tied to the desks. Okay, so this is a way to basically what you can say, address the physical security of your key assets like laptop. Now you can build a policy saying every laptop has to be locked to the desk whenever you start working at a public place. Now that's a cybersecurity policy we have built as an item on your cybersecurity policy for all the employees. So whenever an employee carry his or her laptop to any public place except your home and office, will lock their laptop. So if you go on something like a seminar or a training, you might lock your laptop to that desk whenever you're going for lunch or a tea break or something like that. And this is, believe me, this is a part of cybersecurity policy of enterprise rent-a-car in 2012. Does that make sense? Does that give ample of example for understanding how to document your cybersecurity policy, sir?
No, my question is what kind of goals and tasks?
Course, okay, the course is basically like I given an example, right? The laptop, whenever you carry your laptop at any physical public places, you will normally lock that laptop physically. This was the policy, this was the code of conduct needed, and this is the task to be done by an employee, which is mandatory for every employee who is carrying laptop to execute it whenever they go to a public place to use your laptop. Does that answer your question, sir?
Not really. What are the other tasks?
Uh-huh.
This is the first task. Then other.
So
Okay.
do you think this policy is...
Ravind, let me take that thing.
Please go ahead.
When it comes to the achievable goals of a cybersecurity plan, so just say consider an example as a banking entity. There has been a cyber security attack on the organization. So the steps or the action plan for the cybersecurity expert that needs to be performed when it comes to, okay, I mean, okay, forget about it. So just consider if there is a theft at your home, what would be your action plans? What would be your goals? In similar scenario, when it comes to the organization, if there is cybersecurity plan, you'll drop out a plan, you'll work out on a plan. What what would be your reaction to it? So that comes here as in uh, figuring it out critical assets, figuring it out critical businesses, what business to be run, what would be the expected time for that business to be run, or the impact of that entire cybersecurity attack. How will you work on the impact? How will you figure out that what is the actual impact? Is it again, as it comes to the criticality and priority, since it's a critical situation, so you prioritize. Prioritization again comes to the action plan, as in what business has been compromised, what is the actual impact, what are the number of servers or the IT network components that has been compromised, how much time as an organization, how much time will it take you to recover from that incident and bring your entire business up. So all these, so these are the overall expectation when it comes to the cybersecurity plan. Again, as in security measure, whom will you inform? So like there is CERT organization. Every country has an organization named as CERT, Cyber Emergency Response Team. Then there are cyber policing. Then there are cyber experts working independently to help you out or to help an organization to come out of the plan. So all these things would come out as a part of the plan to figure it out. Who needs to be approached at what time, and what would be your plan of action to come out of that crisis situation. So these are like achievable goals. In that you will figure out, see, if okay, consider that you have a ransomware attack. Your entire data has been encrypted, and now the attacker is asking you some ransomware. So as in cybersecurity plan, as a cybersecurity expert, what will you decide? You will decide the what is the ransom that he is asking, and what are the businesses that has been compromised, and what would be the time that you will take to recover from that particular ransomware attack. Figuring it out, you will figuring these two scenarios, you will figure it out that what action to be taken. Is it that directly I pay some ransom to this cyber security cyber attacker, and I'll get the key so that my all the data would be decrypted, or you will work on to the reactive plan that you will enforce a cyber emergency in your organization, hire some expert outside the organization or independently working into the domain cyberspace, and then you'll try to recover it. So, because if there's a ransomware attack on an organization, there is a probable loss of financial loss, data loss, organization's reputation loss. So, considering these three scenarios, you will work out on a plan that what would be the you as in definitely not you, but you will give your inputs, you will give your suggestions to the management, and then it's management's call that what needs to be done. I'll simply pay the ransom to the attacker, or invoke a cyber response plan, and then come out of that situation. So these are the achievable goals. Does that
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
your question?
Okay. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anissa. Sure, great. So, let's go ahead. So, then you link this business objectives and the goals together to make sure you address these vulnerabilities and you test them also. So, this is a kind of implementation of these policies on a ground. Okay. What I would really suggest, go through the recording and try to understand how you can develop a cybersecurity plan. Okay. How do you identify key threats, key risk, and everything? Now let's do a kind of hands-on workshop, and we have almost a kind of 4 or 5 days gaps for our next session. Take down an homework, try to build a kind of or try to understand how we can develop a cybersecurity plan for a typical a small shop. Let's say there's a new rather than shop, let's call it a software company. So let's say you are starting up a new company, might be called new innovative software in your city, in the outskirts of city, because that's kind of you have a cheap retail real estate and so on and so forth. So let's try to understand, try to formulate some policy on all these 6 entities in terms of how you build a cyber security plan. Give it a thought, write down some bullet points, and we'll discuss this thing in our next session, where we'll try to go one by one how you build this, what are the nooks and gaps, nooks and corner. Okay, it'll be a quick exercise rather than having to write a detailed essay of each and every policy. Try to jot down 5 6 policies, 5 6 such identify key assets, key threats, prioritize these assets and threats, and then set some 5 6 goal and document your policy, document your procedures, and then let's build a test plan for that. So it'll be kind of hardly an hour and a half type of overall homework we will discuss in our next session. Again, there's no force here. The more you put in your efforts, the more you'll understand. And these are the basics we are talking about here. We are not creating actual organization cyber policy, but I want you to start understanding how we build this policy and how we implement this policy. We have discussed good number of examples, right? So you can understand how we can do it, how we have to do it as a cybersecurity expert. Policy building will give us a thought process of how exactly I can think from a company owner's perspective, why I should invest in this cybersecurity, and that also kind of good thought process to do sales in cybersecurity instrument as well. And we'll discuss that roles and responsibility afterwards, whenever we actually start understanding different roles and different responsibility for a given cybersecurity expert. Are you with me? Have you understood the homework?
Yes, right.
Yeah. You don't have to be very lengthy or big. Just try to address 4 5 policy, 4 5 key assets, and so on and so forth. Anu sir, do you want to add anything to that, sir?
No, sir, I'm good.
You're good, right? Now let's stop here.
The only thing is as Ravi sir has given consider a software entity, we can also consider it as somewhere in the banking organization, and then prepare a cybersecurity goals or plans for it in terms of any attack.
Consider it from as an owner of a bank. So let's say you're opening
Yep.
a bank on the outskirts of your city, okay, or a software company. Decide on your own which type of organizations you want to open and what type of policies and procedure you would like to implement to start with. Does that simplify your life? If you have any questions, you can ask us via WhatsApp. we might have a quick call on a similar time levels, but let's keep it open, or we might answer you on WhatsApp also. We have a special WhatsApp group created for our discussions, so please let's utilize that. Okay, now let's have a quick feedback session. Like, how do you find today's session in terms of understanding, delivery, speed of these discussions and all? Okay, let's start with Andy, sir. Andy, could you please go ahead?
Get a question that well, can you come again?
Come again, sir, please. You want to ask some question? Please go ahead, sir. You're most welcome.
Can you come again with that question?
I couldn't understand you, sir.
Can you repeat the question? I don't know what's wrong with my computer. Can you repeat the question?
No issues, sir. No issues, sir. These things do happen because we are doing this video conferencing. You are in North America. I'm in Mumbai and so on and so forth. The way I was checking, could we have a feedback for this session? Do you find this session a bit useful? Are you getting more confident? Could you understand whatever we have discussed with the example? Is it easy enough, or is it like kind of faster for you, or the speed of delivery in terms of this technicality? Now we are moving into a bit of technical world right here, so your understanding is of utmost important, because unless and until you understand these basic things, moving ahead sounds a really unrealistic goal, right? So that's why I want to ask you, how do you find about in terms of this session number 2? Let's go on that. Your feedback on session. Please go ahead, sir.
Yes, this session is very simplified, and it makes me really understand the roadmap. And it's like I said, it's simplified, so it gives me the idea of what is to come.
Wow, good, sir.
Yes, so I think we are in the right direction. We are walking in the right direction.
Perfect. Could you please nominate anybody else from our participants?
Yeah, for me it's very good, but if you add more and more example, then it will be really easy to understand.
Yes, sir. We've discussed some example. You want more example? Okay, let me add those things in a presentation as well. Thanks a lot, sir. Suggestion very taken, sir. Yeah. Anything else, sir? Jay, sir, anything else to add to that?
No, that's okay.
Okay. Could you please nominate somebody? Hello. Okay. Let's go ahead. Shilpa ma'am, please go ahead.
Today's session, when you're explaining, I feel like I understand it, but at the same time, it feels it's a lot of information.
Right.
I will definitely have to go through the slides and understand each one in my own word, if I can explain it or not. I think what would help me is maybe if I have this presentation beforehand, so I'm familiar with what we're going to cover, and then maybe I can ask more questions.
Definitely, ma'am. I'm going to share this presentation after our session. Okay. Even I'm going to share the recording as well within, I think, a couple of hours. So you'll have that thing released on the YouTube. You can watch it whenever you need it.
Yes, thank you.
Most welcome. Could you nominate somebody, ma'am?
Andra?
Yes. Andra, ma'am, could you please go ahead?
Yeah, as Jay told that if it is the more example ways, that will be more helpful for me.
Sure.
And today's session is very good. I understand. And one thing I want to confirm about the homework, that I have to write the bullet points according to the cybersecurity plan for a retail shop, right? If you want to make a retail shop, what the cybersecurity plan we have to build, what the things you have to in our mind, that what the crime can be happening. So according to that, I have to write the plan, or anything else? Just I want to confirm.
Please use your imagination. You can use a software startup company. You might use a retail shop. You might use as a bank also, right? It's like you're starting a new bank with a single office. So use your imagination, and you can use any thought process, and we'll discuss among that, so that we know how we can start initializing this cybersecurity planning.
Yeah, and another point is that priority, that the point is that we have to prioritize. So between the two system we are prioritizing, that is a normal employee and the CEO. But in a single system, we also have some priorities, right?
Right.
Like that in the mobile system or in the laptop, if you want to prioritize that some part will be, this part we have to prioritize more rather than the others, that we can also do, right? In the
Yes,
single
very
system,
rightly said. There are
that
different
will.
levels of priority. There are different level of scenario as well. Like smartphone, you can't lock physically, right? So for that, you have different type of phone traceability type of softwares and all.
That I am thinking that in our phone, like that, if we open the phone by the password, after opening that, our WhatsApp is just clicking the WhatsApp, we can open that. But if you want to open the banking related anything or anything else, that again the password is we have to provide, right? So
Yes,
they are
second
using
level
the
of security. Right, very
internet,
rightly
the
said.
password they're asking, right? But for the
Yes,
WhatsApp open, we don't want to. They are not asking the password like that. So in
exactly.
single, also the priority has been allotted. So that's the another point. So there will be like labels that the system to system prioritization, and in single system there should be in the software also there are level of prioritization. Okay.
Very rightly, said, ma'am. And I think you have started your mind wheels churning now. And this is what we want. This is what, it'll give you a complete scenario of how we build the cybersecurity plan at a basics. Then we're going to expand it to a level where an auditor, an analyst can go through these pre-built cybersecurity policies. That's the goal of these whole exercises. So you very correctly said, for certain applications, certain departments, there could be higher security. They need to do certain things to clear that security. Yes, of course. But for certain executives or salespeople or something like that, you might have a reduced security. Very rightly said. And this is what we are looking for in terms of understanding the cybersecurity implementation for a given organizations, for a given group of people as well. Very rightly said. Thanks a lot for that, ma'am.
Antara ma'am,
Yes.
one more thing, and as in adding one more point to it. So see, criticality, prioritization, cybersecurity, infosec, IT. So just understand that all these technical words or technical understanding revolves around the data only.
Okay.
So for any be, be it organization, be it a business within that organization, be it a function within that organization, or be it an individual within that organization, everything revolves around the data. You figure it out, what data
Yes.
is critical, what data needs to be prioritized. So like as an example I mentioned in the earlier of this conversation, you have your data backed up on Google, as in Google Drive. So at there you figure it out at what photos or videos needs to be kept, what photos or videos needs to be removed or deleted. Same goes
Yes.
for data. So for you, at that point of time, in that scenario, photos and videos are data. Again, in similar fashion, if that comes to the organization, for them it is the business data, it is the financial data, it is the customer data. So the entire cybersecurity plan or entire cybersecurity world revolves around the data only. What data needs to be categorized, what data needs to be prioritized.
So there are some applications also which are normally critical, like your dashboards, your transactional with your clients and all those things. So yes, data is definitely one of the most critical thing. But for certain organizations, even the applications do carry a lot of importance. Be it an enterprise resource application, how the incomings, what are the what you can say materials you have procured and so on and so forth. So yes, data is at the utmost, but yes, there are some sort of other criticality also, like the digital assets we're talking about, the laptop. If the asset is not marked critical, we might miss the specific policy regarding those as well. So yes, data is the most critical, very rightly said. But yes, some sort of a applications, some sort of a digital assets, we might include in our cyber policy to make sure we address their criticality as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
No problem. So please do try to give it a go, and we'll discuss this in case of any understanding gaps, or anything which we need to add to this cybersecurity policy in a leaps and bounds, and that's how we can become a cybersecurity expert day by day. Okay, thanks a lot for your time. Let's I'll publish the schedule once we finalize training, most probably on the coming Friday or Thursday. Let me discuss that thing and sort out the logistics. Normally the plan is to have 3 sessions in a week, but currently due to certain limitations, I know this week we just had 2 sessions. So let me and Anush sir work on that, and we'll come back to you. Okay, thank you, thanks a lot for your timing.
Thank
Have a
you.
great weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Take
Have a
care.
good
Bye
night.
bye. Good night.